last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week: say bye-bye to the former Penn State football coach and foster parent Jerry Sandusky, who has now been sentenced to 30 to 60 years in prison for sexually abusing 10 boys over a 15-year period. This after he releases an audio statement on the night before the sentencing, slamming what he calls the false accusations, and comparing himself to King David fighting Goliath in a letter to the judge. And in spite of concerns that Mr. Sandusky will be introduced as the cell block bitch, as putting him into prison will put him at risk of sexual assault by other inmates, after statistics reveal that sex offenders are 2 to 4 times more likely to be raped in prison than anybody else. In Tennessee this week, DCS is holding more talks to address allegations that they didn't protect abused kids, as their lagging reforms keeps them under court-ordered oversight, while the commissioner is trying to claim that the data that the court is using to persecute the agency is inaccurate, as well as concerns that the Tennessee child protective industry's faulty computer system is causing the state to over and underpay foster parents. In Arizona, the child protective industry wants to hire another 200 more CPS agents to snatch kids from parents. In Illinois, CPS agents who are worried about losing their jobs in a round of budget cuts are playing the cuts will harm kids card, thus prompting the state to cancel the planned layoffs of CPS agents. In California, foster kids are being targeted by identity thieves. The United States is being criticized in the Human Rights Watch report over the use of solitary confinement and adult prisons for juvenile offenders. In Kentucky, education officials ban the use of dangerous and abusive physical restraints on the kids except for when the schools feel it's necessary. In Lexington, Massachusetts, parents are upset over the school's use of seclusion rooms for the punishment of their special needs kids. And instead of spending the money to try to improve the schools, Adderall is turning out to be a popular drug for improving the test scores of kids who are not doing well in schools in the low-income neighborhoods. In Ireland this week, middle-class families are about to be visited by social welfare inspectors to make sure that all the kids who parents are receiving benefits for are real. And a 17-year-old Dublin boy has been charged with false imprisonment and threatening to kill his social worker. In the Netherlands, the committee which investigates the abuse of children in foster care are getting ready to send 42 files on sexual abuse to the Public Prosecution Department. Russia's foreign ministry is demanding that the Florida parents who are accused of abusing the Russian orphan who they adopted are severely punished. And as Russian journalists flock to Finland to handle a case of a Russian child who was snatched from his family, Finland responds by claiming that there is no way in hell that Russian families are overrepresented in Finland's foster care system. In Australia, there has been an 8-fold increase in the number of children abused while in state care over the last year. More than 1,400 Australian kids who have been known to the child protective industry have yet to be assigned a social worker who would investigate abuse claims. There's a call to ban the practice of forced sterilizations on disabled Australian kids. And Dr. John Knight slams the Australian government's forced adoption apology, saying that any emotional scarring felt by families was self-inflicted. In England, the government's plan to cap the welfare benefits of poor people who keep on having babies who they can't afford has been branded abhorrent by the children's charities. A British charity has been fined £70,000 for losing the records containing sensitive information of young children. A British mother is upset after being reported to social services for disciplining her child. A British couple wins back their children from social services after weathering the storm of a lengthy high court battle after the father was wrongfully convicted of abusing one of his daughters. A British social worker was removed from the register for destroying records before they were entered into the computers. A British newspaper publishes an article giving advice to evil social workers who snatch children and end up being listed on websites who expose their fraud and corruption. And journalist Christopher Booker says that the UK's child protective industry is severely dysfunctional, hides behind a veil of secrecy, and is the worst scandal he has seen in his 50-year career. In entertainment news this week, the Octomom has been accused of allowing her kids to sexually abuse each other, which the current nanny says is absolutely ridiculous and complete bullshit. The BBC is finally launching an investigation into a British DJ who was accused of sexually abusing teenage girls. The BBC is also taking heat from British social workers after airing an episode of The EastEnders, which portrayed social workers in a negative light after the main character has her child snatched on the show. And after threatening to fire Big Bird at the first debate, presidential candidate Mitt Romney decides not to show up for the Nickelodeon's Kids Pick the President TV special. In Utah, 2 adoptive parents are being glorified for adopting a group of 5 siblings who were snatched from their parents and separated for months in the state's foster care system, while 2 other Utah women are accused of having sex with their foster sons. In Arizona, a foster parent is arrested for having sex with his foster kids. In California, a foster mother was indicted for putting bleach on the diaper of a 1-year-old. A judge delays the trial for a California foster father who was accused of killing a 3-month-old foster kid in his care. And in Pennsylvania, a state prosecutor and his wife are charged with beating and starving their adopted children. In Michigan, 4 parents are suing over their placement on the state's phony and unconstitutional child abuse registry. In Massachusetts, a chemist is arrested for faking drug tests, thus throwing thousands of drug abuse cases into doubt. In Indiana, the child protective industry settles its part of a lawsuit involving the death of a 16-month-old girl who was in foster care. And in Mississippi, a real mother wants answers as to how her kid got rope burns around his neck while in foster care. In North Carolina, a judge can't make up his mind as to what to do about a Mexican man whose kids were thrown into foster care while he was being deported. In Pennsylvania, a crowd of people hold a vigil for a 3-year-old kid who is recovering from a beating from her foster father last week. In Texas, a 3-year-old girl is killed after 2 whole months of living in her foster home. And finally, tonight in Georgia, a mother is suing Radio Shack for selling her daughter a refurbished cell phone filled with porn. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.